thing. Also, I got a bridge to sell you. Well, to discuss this plan that was just passed, it isn't going to cost us anything. Let's bring in Texas Congressman Pat Fallon and Missouri Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler. Thanks for joining us both. I'm so excited, though. We get all this free stuff. It's not costing us anyone. Congressman, I want to start with you, though. Kevin McCarthy had that record-breaking speech last night. He said that Democrats rejected roughly 600 amendments from the Republicans on that whole so-called Build Back Better boondoggle. And apparently, they didn't want any input from the Republicans. They beat them all back. How bad of an example does this set, especially as you guys get ready to likely take the majority, that they don't want anything to do with the other side? So that seems to be how we're going to play.
Well, Sean, it's historically it's horrific, quite frankly. And I think that they'll change their tune in 13 months. They're going to want to be bipartisan then when they can't get anything done because they don't have the numbers. But I call it the Bernie Biden bankruptcy BS, because that's what it is, the fact that it's paid for like money falls from the sky. But the most egregious part of it, and there are literally hundreds of things that will make your stomach crawl, is the fact that they want to hire 87,000 new IRS agents, give them an $80 billion budget. For context, they usually only have about a $12 billion budget, and to snoop on pretty much every American if you average $28 a day in spending, which most Americans do, without any justifiable cause. Is this 2021 or is it 1984?
Congresswoman Hartzler, Pelosi claimed that the $555 billion worth of climate initiatives, which we showed earlier, is for religious purposes. Watch this.
And it is a moral issue if you believe, as I do, that this is God's creation and we have a moral obligation to be good stewards. But even if you don't share that view religiously, we all share it morally, that we have a responsibility to future generations.
All right, I agree. We should take care of this earth. But once again, Democrats switching the narrative to fit their agenda. Is this going to work?
Oh, absolutely not. It's called individual responsibility. I bet she hasn't ever picked up trash in her neighborhood to help clean up the environment, yet she wants to take money from other people and put it to programs that she thinks are good, and they're really propping up their friends, their liberal buddies, and also propping up Beijing. I call this the Build Back Beijing bill, because they strong-arm Americans to accept solar energy and to pursue that, and by so doing, they are helping China. 80% of the polysilicon in the world is from China. 50% of actually that product, that raw material that is used in solar panels, is from Xinjiang province, where we have Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. And what is so disgusting about this bill, and that the original bill had provisions there saying none of these monies can go towards any entity that supports slave labor. And in the last version 2 weeks ago that she introduced at midnight, she took out that amendment. I think she very clearly knew that in order to have as many solar panels as she wants, they're going to have to buy these materials from Xinjiang province, where the Uyghur Muslims are in concentration camps. And so she took that out. And so clearly the Democrats care more about their Green New Deal buddies than they do about human rights and people who are being killed in concentration camps.
All right, I'd like to ask both of you guys to stick around, because I got a big question for our viewers. Do you guys think that women should be serving in the, or have to register for the draft just like men do? Well, we're going to ask these two lawmakers to stick around and discuss if women should have to register for the draft. Congress is debating it right now. It's creating a divide, especially among Republicans. Our two members of Congress are going to be here after the break to give us their take. Stay with us. All right, for the first time in the United States' 245-year history, women can be mandated to register for the draft. The House included the change when it passed its version of the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA, as folks in Washington like to say. Back in September, it passed, and the Senate could act by the end of the month. Back to debate this measure, Congressman Pat Fallon and Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler, who just, by the way, authored an op-ed which says instead of a female expansion, America should retire archaic draft once and for all. Welcome back, guys. I want to start real quick with everybody just giving me a yes or no to set the table. Congresswoman, yes or no, should women be part of the draft right now?
No.
Okay. Congressman?
I don't think women should be part of the draft, but I do think they should be part of
it. It's a yes or no.
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
All right. Good to set the table here. I believe they should. So, like, all of us have our cards on the table. Congressman, I want to start with you, Congresswoman, because you wrote that op-ed. I get your point here. We've had an entire volunteer army since 1973. So this is a bit of a silly question and a silly issue because we're not going to have a draft. It's all volunteer army. But at the end of the day, men are required to register for the draft when they're 18, and women are not. And so make the case to me, Congresswoman, why women shouldn't have to register for the draft.
Well, we're spending $26 million a year to go to an empty office in Washington that hasn't been used since postage stamp was 8 cents and gas was 38 cents a gallon. We could better use that $26 million a year to help shore up our most professional, capable military force in the world that is all volunteer. So I am proposing that we do away with the draft for both men and women. And if we were to ever need it again, I feel confident that we could stand it up with our technology in a very short order. But I also feel like that Americans would step up like they always have, both men and women, and volunteer for the service. But we don't need to keep wasting $26 million a year, and we don't need to draft women to prove that women are equal. And the author of this amendment, her main point was that we need equality, and so we've got to start registering women. And I've got news for women and everyone, all liberals, that women are equal now, and we don't need to draft them for war in order to prove it.
Congressman Fallon, I remember when I was getting into the military, I was literally getting in, and they were like, we need to see your draft card. And I'm like, you do see the irony in this, right? I'm literally signing up, and you're asking me for a card, asking me if I registered. So explain to me how you come to your position.
Well, Sean, I think the left got this wrong, or got this right for the wrong reasons, quite frankly. We haven't had a draft in 50 years. This is just selective service. And I'm looking at a nightmare scenario with China. The difference when we had a draft, let's say during World War II, our GDP was almost twice the size of Imperial Japan and Nazi Germany combined. Our population was pretty much on par with them. Now we have an enemy, or at least an opponent, potential enemy in China, where our GDPs are pretty much on par, but they have 5 times the population that we do. So in a nightmare type of scenario, I want to defeat China, and the best way to do that is to have all able-bodied young folks. We're not going to put women in foxholes, because any nation that puts large numbers of women on the front lines is destroying itself. So we're talking about support roles so we can maximize our combat power to take on the evil regime in China if necessary. God forbid that will ever become necessary.
I think that's such a great point, because so often we think this would be a combat role, but there's so many other roles to be filled when you are going to combat. But Congresswoman, interestingly enough, the latest poll shows support for drafting women has dropped drastically since 2016, going from 63% who supported it to just 45% who support it today. You know, as we think about women equality, why do you think this number has shifted so drastically in the last 5 years? Congresswoman Hartzler?
Oh, well, I just think it's common sense that we don't need women. We've got half of the American population now who is not even alive, wasn't even alive in the last draft. And we have enough men right now of the age of combat that if we were needed to, they could serve. So, you know, women will step up. I feel confident voluntarily. They already serve 17% or comprise 17% of our services now. But we don't need to start wasting more money on a system that isn't even used when we have technology to do otherwise if needed.
Congressman Fallon, as someone who does and did serve our nation, do you think it's difficult to make the case to some of the folks on both sides of the aisle who haven't served why we need to still have a draft?
Well, yeah, I mean, to some degree, Sean, and let's be honest, too. The United States is the same place that it was 50 years ago and 80 years ago during World War II. I mean, half of this country is being taught to hate this country. I mean, half our young people are taught that the United States is not on balance something positive in the world. That's disgusting. So I do fear that, I mean, can we have the numbers that we're going to need, again, in a nightmare scenario where you have to take on China with a nation that has 5 times the population.
Hopefully that won't happen. Yeah. Well, Congresswoman Hartzler and Congressman Fallon, appreciate you both being here. I know this is such a divided issue amongst all Congress, but Republicans as well, so appreciate your take.
Thank you all.
Thank you.